turn subtitles on? Wait.
That doesn't seem...
Wait. I'm trying it. Wait,
Yeah.
talk.
Hello, do you have subtitles on? Is it able to understand the words that I am saying?
It still says it's turning them on. It's recording at least though. So okay, while the subtitles figure out their life, we can get going with this intro.
Okay, I hope that half of our video has subtitles on it.
That would make me really happy. All right, well, we took a week off and we are back. Kinda, sort of. In parts. And well, this week's podcast will be brought to you by correct airplane etiquette and bad Democratic VP picks.
This week's podcast is also brought to you by Black History Month and #BabyNut, obviously.
Oh no. They work! And it says it. Yeah, I just had the words baby nut flash up on my screen, so that's great.
Fantastic.
I love it. I don't know anything about what that is, and I'm scared to know.
And I'm your other host, Jesse James.
Shit.
We'll talk about it at the correct time. It's stupid. But seeing as we're now quite a ways into February, I thought we should probably talk about Valentine's Day, which was just recently. And I asked you a question about whether or not, not whether or not, what you would change about Valentine's Day to make it a better holiday.
Well, I think for starters, I guess we should start with the disclaimer that I don't have any strong feelings about Valentine's Day.
I don't think either of us do, so we're good.
Yeah. It was actually kind of hard to come up with things to change about it. I just came up with like dumb rules that should be implemented that I personally would appreciate.
That would be perfect.
So my dumb hypothetical rules for Valentine's Day is that from here on out, all of the Valentines have to be handmade. No more store-bought crap. You got to put some thought and effort. You got to get out the glue and the glitter and DIY that shit.
Everybody has to do Arnold Schwarzenegger Christmas cards once a year, but it's for Valentine's Day. I agree with this.
That's what I want. And my second rule is all chocolate exchanged must be dark chocolate. Stop giving me milk chocolate.
I also agree with this.
And those are my two big rules. I also thought from a business perspective, I'm sure this already happens in places, but if I owned a bar, I would cater more to people who are not celebrating. Because I just being out on Valentine's Day, it felt like people were really trying to sell like very Valentine's themed things, but I would go like strongly anti-Valentine's Day and make a drink or something that would get you hammered like instantly and call it something really stupid like the Cupid's deathbed or something like that.
Okay, I could get behind that. I was out on Valentine's Day, and Lost Lake and Capitol Hill had half of its normal menu, and everything was more expensive. So that's my view of Valentine's Day, is that people who are single are just getting fucked on prices, so they might as well just hide in their homes, I guess.
Yeah, that's why I think they need a cocktail made just for the single people.
Yeah.
That's like the most bang for your buck as possible.
I would get behind that. I was mostly thinking we should redirect the whole idea of Valentine's Day to another thing that I don't care about, which is paintballing, and just have it be a paintball holiday. Because
Ooh.
then all the single people could go shoot each other, and all the couples could go buy overpriced shit, and then we still get chocolate the day after. That's sort of where I'm thinking about it.
I like
Speaking
that
of
a lot.
cocktails, though, I feel like we should go over what we're drinking because that's a vital piece of information for this.
Mhm.
I have, of course, a tall glass of water over here, and I have this warm cup of sake, which is from the giant
Mm,
Tanuki carton, and then
jealous.
because I've been playing Death Stranding, I have this full flavor shitty monster. uh,
Nice.
I'm looking forward to not enjoying that, but you know, I still need it.
Very good. I've had a lot of Red Bull in the past week, which is not something that is characteristic of me ever in my life.
Some Dallas
So
Red Bull.
my uncle just had it like in this fridge, and I was too lazy to make coffee, so I was just like, I woke up, it's Red Bull time. So that was great.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That sounds like a good lifestyle. What were you doing in Dallas again? Were you doing work for your uncle?
Yeah, it was mostly work stuff the whole week.
Okay.
Yeah, we had an event on Friday that was like at Macy's has created this new like store experience thing called the market, and it's
Okay.
supposed to be like you're walking through a magazine, but basically what it is, it's like less small, more like curated experience of products sort of things. So like there's different
Okay.
corners. There's like plant corner, there's like girl corner, boy corner, beauty corner. It's pretty much just a regular store, but it doesn't look like a mall.
It
And
sounds like they're trying to change the open world experience of going to a mall to a linear experience of going through somebody's
yeah,
designed work.
yeah, I think that's basically what it is. It's just very like designy on the inside to appeal to people. It's pretty cool looking,
Hmm.
but I don't know that it'll keep them from dying. So
Well, it's Macy's, so probably not.
yeah, but that's what we did on. That's where I was on Valentine's Day. So
It's exciting.
ooh,
Uh, I spent Valentine's Day at a art opening with a handful of people. Uh,
that sounds good.
it ended up, my intention was first off to go to the art opening because it was weird, but also like the opening pieces that they had there were weird. Um, but also like that seems like a good place for people to hang out uh, that aren't doing Valentine's Day stuff.
Yeah.
Uh, and it ended up being like quite a bit of couples there anyway, but
Hmm.
in a very non Valentine's Day environment and not doing couple stuff. So I feel like that's a success. Uh, Also, the work there, I feel like I should shout out some. Uh, Unsurprisingly, the weirdest stuff is done by a Polish person, so no surprises there. But there was okay. I'll explain the first two beforehand. They're all incredibly inappropriately named. Um,
Perfect.
so there was a show called Subspontaneous, and that was two sculptors doing work.
Hmm.
And they did a lot of stuff that was like plaster packed into sausage casing. Uh, and then they also made
Mm.
like what looked like very soft pillows, but they were made out of plaster. But they did a lot of like interesting work. One of them was doing a lot of work with gourds, but they were like building metal structures and then growing gourds inside them.
Oh, cool.
Uh, so they had these weird like cages almost with like just like a the gourds that look like dicks. What are those called? Uh,
I don't know gourd names
it might
well
be
enough.
butternut squash.
Oh, I
Uh,
think that, yeah, that's right.
yeah. So those would be grown inside a cage next to each other. So they were in these weird like orientations and like bizarre shapes.
Hmm.
And he had like one or two that were taken out of the cages and were like all like built around it. Um, that one was done by Francesca Lohman and Rob Ree. I actually don't know who did which stuff. They just had a joint show thing. So that's worth checking out if it's near you at some point or if you live in Seattle. The next one that was very inappropriately named was called Natural Horror. And Natural Horror was a bunch of wet felting pieces. Uh,
Ugh.
and so it was like big, like almost skeleton blankets. Like it had like fibers and stuff that were in the shape of a blanket with like fibers between them, but they were see-through for the most part.
Hmm.
Uh, and then they had wet felted onto it, which looked almost like free floating oil pastel the way they had done it. Uh,
Okay. What is wet felting? Because I was, okay, when you said that, I thought felt that was wet. And that
so
sounded
felting. Uh,
unpleasant.
have you ever seen felting where you like use little needles and pluck it and it like puffs up into
Okay, yeah,
uh,
I knew what
you
that
can
was.
like
I
make
I didn't know what the name was.
weird little teddy bears and shit out of that. Wet felting is um, you're kind of mashing the fibers together, uh, and you can like mix colors together and stuff that way instead of like plucking it out and mixing it that way.
Okay, that's
But it
cool.
it looked like they just laid a base down and then worked in a bunch of shapes and stuff and then hung it up. It looked really cool though, and that was done by Rebecca Brewer. But the weirdest one was called Love Bite, and it was three videos that were all. Was that something over on your end?
That is a heater. Hey, Evan.
Oh,
Can
that's
you
fine. um, the the videos were all uh, essentially the sun talking to people on Earth, I guess, but it
Okay.
had a really weird, like sexual, almost like negging quality. Uh, and
Hmm.
they were like long videos for like art videos. They were like 15 minutes, and it was just, uh, man, I don't have any good photos of what that looked like because video photos are not really a thing that happens a lot at art shows, but it's uh, somebody made a good point. It looked like Crazy Orange or whatever the hell it was. It was like a old Nickelodeon thing. Uh,
Oh, the annoying orange.
Annoying Orange, yeah.
Yeah.
It looked like that,
Ugh.
and most of the video was staring at a giant image that looked like that. And it was
Ooh.
talking at you, but it was like talking. One of them had like a photo of a penis with like weird uh, like rainbow goo on top of it, almost like censoring it, but not. And then like rolling a joint out of a band-aid and stuff like that. But it was interspiced with this like sun face that was like singing poorly at you and then talking about how like uh you're you're not any good but they love everything about you kind of stuff, like that kind of shit. uh
Yeah, okay.
there was a lot of like very overtly sexual stuff in it too, uh and that's done by Angiska Polska. uh but yeah, that was a lot. uh a big part of
Memorable.
the
Sounds memorable.
third video was like talking you through walking down into a wet cave, and then it just kept like being like deeper and deeper. It's just like, cool.
Don't
Uh,
like that. Nope.
so so, I would also suggest going to the back rooms if you go to the fry, or seeing this person's stuff elsewhere if you want to feel uncomfortable slash put off. But that's your art update. It's out there. It's, interact with it if you want.
It's happening. If you want it, it's there.
But we went to Lost Lake in Seattle for dinner after that, and it was more expensive than usual, less food available. Everybody was rushed, and it didn't look like there were any couples in there that I could see, but that doesn't change the couples pricing. They were offering milkshakes that were like chocolate strawberry milkshakes, and they were out of milkshakes. So there's that. They must have had some people show up, but we weren't there that late. And then my roommate and his boyfriend and another one of our friends and I all got locked out of a garage. So I think they had to like go back there the next day, and we all took
really?
a lift home. So that was fun. It's about what you would expect from a non-Valentine's Day out.
That sounds right.
Mm-hmm. But I do have this chocolate banana Pocky.
Ooh.
And I also have this kelp snack.
Oh,
so
I like the sound of that. That sounds pretty good. I don't have any snacks with me, but I'm drinking a green tea with honey in it. That's my drink right now. I might switch to some wine later, but and then I have this jug of water because I wanted to reuse the cider thing, but it's just a gigantic jug of water. I would have snacks because I brought these cookies from Dallas that there's a bakery called San Martin.
Yeah.
In, I want to say it's Colombian, but I'm probably wrong. But there are these cookies that they sell there called alfajores, and they're like shortbread, like dulce de leche, a sandwich between shortbread, and then it's just like powdered sugar, and they're so crumbly and flaky, and I brought a bunch of them home, and they did not travel well, so I have a bag of crumbs.
Oh, yeah.
Sad.
That sounds like my experience trying to get like Mexican wedding cookie style stuff home in the past, where you put it in a bag and then you realize, oh, this can't be in a bag like that.
Yeah. It did not go over well. Speaking of traveling, I'm sending you a picture.
Okay.
And I would like you to describe what's happening in this photo.
So, was that a full plane?
Nope. Initially, I was in the seat where her feet are.
Oh, okay.
I moved.
There is a woman on this plane, it appears, that is just fully enjoying the space that is allotted to her. I like that she also has like a full bag of Tim's Cascade chips and a can of Coke behind her.
This lady came very prepared. She was prepared to have her own space because initially
this woman is taking up 2 full seats of just chilling.
Hmm.
That's a very at-home atmosphere she's built.
Yes, it is. The feet part, not on board with that.
Well, uh, at least she had foot coverings on,
At
so
least there were socks, but there was an aroma. So
oh yeah.
that, that was less good. I think so what happened um, was that I got on this plane and I was sitting in the aisle seat, and she was in the window seat, and she stopped the flight attendant and was like, "Can I move to one of the seats up there at the front of the plane?" And the flight attendant was like, "No, those are our premium seats. You can't move up there." And
Wait,
she,
she was asking if she could move,
yeah.
right? Okay.
Hmm. Like she sat down and she immediately decided, I don't want to be here. So,
To be fair, what she's doing is already criminal. Uh, but
yes.
I thought you meant she was asking if you could move to
Oh no,
other
no,
seats.
no. She sat down and was like, "Can I move to the premium seats at the front?" And the flight attendant was like, "No, you can't. Sorry." And then the lady got really like huffy and upset and just kind of stared out the window for a few minutes. And then a few minutes later, the flight attendant came back and was like, "Just kidding. There's seats next to you. So if one of you wants to move over there." And I was like, "I'm going." So
Yeah.
I got as far away as I could, and then she started like spreading out and laying across the seats and taking your shoes off and like taking all of these assorted full size snacks out of her bag. Like she was just totally prepared to have that much space in the airplane.
This is this is from Dallas. So what is this? Like a 4 hour flight
This
tops?
Oh, was that the 4 hour one or was that my Portland? Yeah, I think that's the 4 hour one. Yeah. So
How does 4 hours facilitate needing to like just use a space like that?
just yeah, like I'm not mad about the laying down. I was like, keep your shoes on. That's I think everyone general rule on an airplane, if you're doing anything that produces an aroma, don't do that thing.
And if you do have to do that thing, there's closed rooms for that.
There's places for it. And also keep your shoes on because nobody wants to stare at your feet. So,
That actually, I so this just sounds like bus activity to me in a lot of ways, but
yeah.
I got on a bus last week. For reference, I ride a minimum of 4 buses a day, so
Mhm.
I'm seeing some people just by uh, exposure. But um, there was a guy sitting in the back, like to be fair, at least he was in the very back of a bus. He was on like the middle of the back seating area.
Mhm.
As I got on the bus, about it was a full sized like flexi part in the middle sized bus. As I got on this bus, there was like the air was just kind of shitty. Uh, and when I got to the middle point of the bus, it was it was as though somebody in the middle section smelled like BO. So I kept walking because there were empty space, like empty bits in the back. As
Mhm.
I got to about where the back door is, which is still like probably 10 to 15 feet from the back of the bus, the odor was so heavy and it wasn't like shit, it wasn't piss, it wasn't like somebody had done something. It was clear that it was BO. Like
Oh
that's
no.
all it was, and it was so strong that so I ended up finding a spot to sit that was like a closer to the middle of the bus. I felt sick for the
Oh
entire bus
no.
ride, and I was quite a ways away from this person. And they were not like somebody in the back, like, oh no, I hope nobody notices. They were like sitting back there, like, like just relaxing. They also like, I can excuse that if it's like a homeless person who is like moving to another place, because that happens a lot.
Yeah.
It did not appear to be somebody who didn't have a place to go. It appeared to be somebody who was just a nasty fuck, and that was fine with them. And that sucks. I do hope that they never take a bus again, because there were people in the front of the bus when I got off that looked ill, and
Oh,
that
no.
bus ride is only like maybe 30 minutes. Like, it's not a long bus ride. So
Oh
uh,
no.
at least that didn't happen, because like taking into account that that person did not seem like they were homeless, you could very easily end up with something like that on a plane, and I don't know what you would do at that point. What?
Yeah, I don't.
Sorry, I just opened this drawer and there's a coconut mask in here.
Ooh. I think you have to use it now. I think that's the rule.
I, I mean, I would use it, but I'm pretty sure that belongs to somebody.
We need a masking pod. That's what I'm
Yeah,
made for.
I would do that. I just need a good one. If you find good cheap ones, just mail me one and
We'll
we'll
do it.
spend a podcast in masks.
That's a good
Oh,
idea.
speaking of the podcast, not that this isn't all sort of speaking of the podcast, but um, by the time this goes up, we should only be talking about things that are like a week or so out of date, because we do
Ooh.
finally have our YouTube channel, this week's podcast, uh, getting close to up to date. So
It's almost all out there. That's exciting. I'm glad.
uh, we should talk about our plans for future endeavors after this podcast, because
Hmm.
uh, I have been talking to some potential contributors and things like that. So,
What is it like? What is it? It's kelp something?
yeah, it's kelp, but it has like a almost like a sweet and sour like powder on it.
Oh, that does sound good.
It's it's not quite fishy enough. I was kind of hoping it would be more salty and less sweet, but I'll take it. It also costs like 60 cents, so
Not bad.
no. Uh, I might have to get up for a second. I forgot to turn a fan off. Uh,
Oh, okay.
but enjoy this moment of silence.
I will not say any words until you return.
See how close you can get to the camera, and then
I don't
have
think
a staring
anybody wants
contest.
that. Nobody wants this. Nobody asked for this. Nobody wants it. I'm fairly certain nobody wants this. I need a snack. I don't have any snacks. I need to go grocery shopping. This is the most riveting podcast of all time. To our listeners, if you have any changes you would make to Valentine's Day, you should email those to it's this week's podcast at gmail.com or DM Vegeta for 2069.
Always DM Vegeta for 2069. Anytime you're drunk, you just don't know what to do, you're lonely, it's Valentine's Day, you DM Vegeta for 2069.
Exactly. Always. I was telling people they should send their Valentine's Day edits, changes to all of our things.
It's a good use of time. I would have thought of that eventually.
I also just stared at the camera real close for a while, but then I figured that's probably not great podcasting. So there's that.
Yep. That's what I remember. The flavor they use for Monster Energy is weird. And you've been missing the action. You look at the screen so you don't see the extra bits.
There's a lot happening. Hey.
There's a storyline.
Could you? There's water being heated up in the background for all of our audio people. I don't think we have any audio people because it's just on YouTube. But
keep an eye on Spotify. You don't know.
We
maybe
need
your wish power.
Someday.
So tell me about the Super Bowl. First, who won?
I don't know. First. I didn't watch it.
Yeah, I don't know either.
I think Shakira won the Super Bowl, from what I've seen and heard. That's right. And maybe J-Lo as well.
So, yeah, I had heard that the two of them were involved. I didn't know much else. Was there a lot of hip shaking? I feel like that's a big part of both of their act.
There was a lot of butts and hips.
All right. That sounds fine.
And there were some very gratuitous crotch shots, which I don't have a problem with.
That's an interesting choice for the Super Bowl. But did you see any bush? Nah, no. It's fine then.
It's all good. That's still PG, I think. But yeah. So they did. I think it was more J-Lo's portion that was criticized because she did a lot of the more crotch shots and literal pole dancing.
So. Did she do any crotch chops?
No, that would have been good though.
Because those are fully acceptable in general media, I've heard.
I think so. I think that's the rules. But no, none of those. Just very good shots of the lower half of J-Lo. And so the reason I wanted to talk about this at all is because I just thought it was funny that, like, I was talking to my uncle's girlfriend who is Venezuelan, and she was she and her other friends from Venezuela were obviously super excited about this performance because it's Shakira, which she loves. She grew up with Shakira.
Wait, is Shakira Venezuelan?
I don't think so. I think she's... I'm going to use the power of Google on this one because I don't want to get it wrong. But she listened to a lot of Shakira, so
okay,
they were very, very, very excited about it. But she watched it with my uncle, and my uncle was of the opinion that this is a little gratuitous for children, probably a little much. But everybody else was like, "Are you kidding me? They look amazing." They're 40, 50 something. I'm pretty sure that J-Lo is Jennifer Lopez age.
Jennifer Lopez, I think, is Puerto Rican, if I remember. Or her heritage is, maybe?
She is... It's coming. She is 50, and she is... why is there no, It actually just says American, but where are we going? Where?
That's the most woke thing I've heard the internet say in a while. not mentioning somebody's ethnicity beyond what country they live in.
Yeah, I feel like I would have to read. Oh, yeah, she's Puerto Rican. Okay. Um, I forgot where this sentence began. Oh, her birthday is the day after mine.
Ooh.
This is all very relevant. Anyway, I just
Do
thought
you
it was
have
very.
so do you have half a J-Lo energy? That's about where you're sitting on that, so
I think so.
nice.
Yeah. Um, what I liked about it was contrasting this uh Super Bowl performance with last year's, which was basically all I remember was Adam Levine like took his shirt off and screamed Atlanta or something like that, and people memed the shit out of that, and it was just kind of like mediocre. But this
I
performance was really good.
Adam Levine has 0% interest in my mind share. I could not care less about Adam Levine. I've
Yeah.
heard that the fact that he is incredibly cut is good,
Mm.
and that's about all I know.
It's, I mean, it's fine.
Yeah,
He's fine.
he's got
But
tattoos, so like 70% of women would not mind fucking him. That's about all I know.
yeah, I think that's a conservative estimate.
Yeah, I
But
uh, I had a dream that was super vivid last night about having a tattoo. Does that count?
yes.
Okay, I can
What
just tell
tattoo did you
people.
get?
Uh, well, that's the ridiculous part. It was only like a maybe fist-sized left shoulder tattoo, and it was done in most of the tattoos that I have designed are in like sort of a dark brown or like red ink.
Mm.
So it was one of those. So it's like not a very standout, like noticeable tattoo to start with. But it was the centerpiece of a very vivid dream where it was like, oh, I guess I got this tattoo. Uh,
That's funny.
I don't have the money for a tattoo, but someday, I guess. Uh,
I got some a needle and some ink with your name on it. I've done so many shitty stick and pokes on myself.
I uh, I have a lot of friends who have done shitty stick and pokes on themselves, but the shittiest tattoo that I've maybe ever seen that somebody did on themselves was with a full tattoo gun.
Ooh.
Uh, as they were they were trying to build out a portfolio for doing tattooing, and they
Oh.
did fuck, what is there's a car that has like a phoenix on it or something like that. It's no, I think it was like a thunderbird basically.
Okay.
They were trying to do a dragon, I'm putting quotation marks in the air, that looked like that. And they just did it on their leg, and I think that they were intending to do it small, but
Mm.
I guess they liked how it was going, and it ended up being like a top of the thigh tattoo,
Oh no.
and it's fucking terrible. And it's almost entirely outline. Like it has
Oh.
almost nothing else in it. Like there's no shading really. It's just they drew it may as well be the Nazca lines on one of their legs. And as far as I know, they have never been a tattoo artist after that. So I think
Why
that they
not?
I think that they own a tattoo gun and have done this to themselves and that's it. I
That's the reason I haven't purchased one yet, because I for a while did want to also be a tattoo artist,
Mhm.
um, hence the interest in stick and poking myself. But I figured if I got an actual tattoo gun, I would go a little crazy probably, and some bad
Right.
shit would happen. So haven't done it.
I I really like the idea of being a tattoo artist, but when I have a lot of like flash type stuff that I've made, and I've also done like I think five now tattoos for other people. that are just the design that they either request my work or they request a specific design, and then they took that in and got it done. And those have all turned out well, but like, I don't know. That lifestyle seems really fun mostly. uh,
Yeah.
but I don't know that I would be able to compete in like the Seattle area. I feel like if I did tattooing as a thing, I would have to then find a city that is specifically less artsy in order to really make a living. And that
Yeah.
I've already got that on lock. So I don't need to add in extra reasons why I can't live here anymore. Though the more I've been working on things and like my upcoming like 10 months probably from now, um, the more I will probably end up having to move at some point just so I can live in a place that isn't priced like Seattle is. Speaking of that, actually, there's to date this recording beyond just hey, the Super Bowl happened. There's a Bernie rally in Tacoma tomorrow night. I would like to go, but in order to get down there, I'd have to leave work early. I don't know if that's going to happen.
That would be fun to go to.
I'm hoping that it's well stocked because um, I think my biggest fear in the elections right now, the Buttigieg stuff is whatever. He's a piece of shit, but like also, I'm hoping that at least the fact that he's very young throws some of the people who don't care about the politics and just want somebody who says good stuff away. Like, but my worry is that through a lot of Elizabeth Warren stuff, who I think is still a very strong second pick, she's kind of gone more and more through this set of debates and stuff towards centrist. She's not all the way there, but she's definitely closer than Bernie is by quite a bit now. And with her stuff about like, well, we could do debt forgiveness, or we could do what was it? It was like the healthcare stuff. Even I think was being set by her as like a, well, we would do that in the fourth year as I'm president. Like that would be the timeline, which to me sounds like we're not going to do it because that's when people start pushing from the other side super hard to make sure they don't do anything anymore.
Yeah.
I think that would be a huge bummer. And I think the biggest danger is places like Seattle that should be like a solid Bernie vote if the messaging were all clear and accurate.
Yeah.
But instead, it's this situation where like so many of the people I know who are really into progressive like ideas and are leaning more towards leftist than whatever liberal is now, which seems very centrist. A lot of them are leaning towards Elizabeth Warren still because she's a more appealing person to vote for in a lot of ways. But it is a lot easier to seem hopeful and like project sort of a everything is okay vibe when you're actually not talking about changing the way government works. You're just talking about like adjusting taxes, which I wish people gave half a shit about this stuff on a regular basis, because during the chunk of time where they hadn't started debating yet, talking to people about like socialist issues was a very like, oh yeah, that sounds great. And then as soon as everybody starts debating, all those people who were like not very informed but were into the ideas that I was talking about, all of a sudden we're like, well, Elizabeth Warren seems like she says the same stuff you say, which is like absolutely not. Like all of the people who are that, or people who have been convinced by like their parents or grandparents that socialism is evil and is also communism, which is weird. I don't know. Anyway, hopefully there's no bummers.
Fingers crossed, no bummers.
He's technically won 2 places at this point, even if the first one doesn't count because of whatever the fuck. And heading towards Super Tuesday stuff, it seems like he'll probably be the obvious front runner, but it's still super, like, I don't know. Getting your hopes up on that stuff seems like a really foolish thing to do at the moment, so we'll see. What do you have any opinions on the current situation?
Well, I mean, sort of related. I was going to complain about Bloomberg floating Hillary as his VP pick.
Oh yeah, that's garbage. Also, Bloomberg can eat a whole dick, but
yeah. I mean, everyone involved in that scenario is just completely no thank you. So that's all I have to say is just fuck that guy, and also please, Hillary, go live your life is what I have to say. I have
she's
to close
rich
this window
as fuck. She can do whatever she wants.
Like, go buy an island and just hang out. Why do you want to be involved in this anymore? I don't understand. I can't see anything right now. I did have a lot of really interesting conversations with my uncle and his girlfriend about like Bernie and stuff because she's from Venezuela, so she has some pretty strong opinions.
Mr. Sanders, if you're nasty.
Yeah. And so was my uncle, so it was interesting to talk to them, but I think my uncle at least, thinks that Bernie is like a full-on communist person, so I don't know.
I wish that there was a way to reach people about what communism looked like and why that isn't like the weird version that we got of it when we were younger. Because communism doesn't seem like the best option, but communism's going to be more what we have to do to avoid like major problems if we don't start working in more socialist ideas now.
Mm-hmm.
And also, socialism is a great way to avoid things like what happened in the French Revolution, which I don't think anybody wants that shit. So why would they want to keep pushing on that? Like, everybody believes they can build a castle big enough for nobody to go take anything out of, and it just happens over and over, and I don't really understand the thinking behind it. And then they demonize people like the Weathermen, who were like legitimately left-wing terrorists, but non-violent ones, which should show like in the history of violence between left and right, the most violent people there have been environmental terrorists. And like, I kind of get their point, I guess. But also, like, that's when you start considering people and animals the same, your mindset's probably going to drift towards that. Alternatively, when you start considering other people that look different than you to not be people, I think that's a much worse situation than maybe just leaning the spectrum in towards everybody's equal. That seems pretty minor compared to the alternative.
Yeah.
But hey, you know, also we already have a ton of socialist, like the prime of America as a place that people want to be was worse than people think, but also involved a lot of socialist ideas to make it that way. And the idea that now people are trying to turn back to, even liberal people are saying like, no, the founding fathers had it right, is really frustrating. Because the founding fathers were slave-owning dick bags that.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Speaking of people who can go eat a whole dick,
Yeah.
I can think of a few. Yeah, there are a few people that I will talk to about this kind of thing, and there seems to be always a fallback to, oh, but it's worse in other places. Oh, but it could be so
Uh-huh.
much worse. And I'm like, fuck off. Like,
Also, where, like, if they're talking about the places that we haven't fucked with using our governmental
right?
pressure,
Yeah.
then it's not worse. Like,
Yeah.
there's a big list of places in the world that are doing much better than we are socially,
Right.
with like when they started measuring that like gross domestic happiness, and
Oh,
everybody like had a giant campaign to make sure that nobody put value in it. And that was like 10 years ago. And we were way down the list for that. Like, we're still doing
yeah.
better than places that we as a country have fucked over, but like being the catalyst for unhappiness throughout the world doesn't make us the best place to live. Like, that's a very stupid way to think about, like, I don't it's doing everything as a corporate entity like our country does is a terrible way to move forward.
Yeah. As soon as I start hearing very like American exceptionalism
Hmm.
ideas, my brain kind of turns off, and I'm just like, I'm not. You can't really. I don't know. I don't know that there's much convincing or anything anything you can say to change people who think that way, especially if they're thinking that our country is ordained by God to be
Yeah.
a beacon of shittiness to the world. But
Yeah, our country politics are leaning closer and closer to Christian identity politics, which, hey, if our country's new manifesto is let's put the Jews in power in the Middle East so we can kill them all and bring about the rapture, maybe it's time for us to do something about the government, because that's no good. um, Speaking of trying to communicate with people like that, I've told you about especially like one set of relatives in particular that I have that are, let's say, hard to deal with on that.
Mhm.
Um, my uh, my pops of Pop Secret fame, uh, and one of my cousins let me in on, after I ended up sending them some information about like the ADL, and like gave them a link to their like glossary of terms for like hate speech and stuff, just so
Yeah.
in as nice a way as I could. I didn't want to like yell stop spreading hate speech, but I told them that like a lot of white supremacists are using the exact points they're giving me, because they started telling me about how AOC was pushing the Muslim agenda and was an undercover Muslim and also an actor and all this stuff. And it's just like, I can't.
Mm.
Also telling me that Ilhan Omar, despite the fact that she came here when she was 10, with, I think, her grandpa or something like that, they were telling me, oh, well, she came here recently, first off, which that's not how anything works. You're not going to be in politics if you just got here, but also that she married her brother to get green card entry, which is another, like, just think about that story and how it doesn't make
just
sense.
just
Like, like how would she get here
just
recently with her brother, get married to him for a green card, and make that
oh
work?
my god.
That's not how anything works. But also, she's been
Uh,
here since she was 10, so fuck off. And completely ignoring the fact, after I told them, because it's very clearly available, like her history, she's a politician.
mhm.
Um, they just kept on it, which is like, at that point, so what? She was abused as a child. That's the best case scenario that you're giving me on like who this person is, who is only doing good for the country. And it turned out that the thing they didn't like about them was that, one, they couldn't tell them apart, which not anybody else's problem, and two, uh, I mean, besides the fact that AOC is definitely Catholic, because I remember them talking about how that was a problem too when
Yeah.
she was elected. Uh, it it's all very fun. Anyway, they think that they're shrill and annoying, which is the thing that I think it comes down to for people who are racist and don't want to admit. Um,
And that
and
also sounds
also,
very specifically sexist.
yeah, also sexist. That's what I was going to say too.
Yeah.
The thing that I was told by my other relatives when I was telling, well, I have my dad and my cousin on um, like a DM chat because I went down there recently, but also like we're, I don't know, we're the goofy ones in our family, so we tend to talk to each other a lot.
Mhm.
And my cousin is religious, I think, but my dad and I are like, we both had our touches with religion as kids, and now we're as far away from that as possible. And uh, apparently, they had been getting told for years now at different intervals by that same relative that they saw angels and demons fighting in clouds, which sounds
Hmm.
like a weird, like, okay, that they probably didn't mean that. Apparently they were getting photos sent to them with like, can you see it, of just a picture of a cloud. And so I don't think this person's getting reached. I also don't think that that's great. They are a parent, so they might want to get some sort of help because that sounds like it could turn into something pretty bad. uh, but I know that their family structure is pretty bad. In the past they had like an abusive father that was a born again, I think a born again Christian. I think the problem was that he pulled the family away from like my Catholic family,
Mhm.
and then he left that family and they're like repairing still, but I think that
Mhm.
the person was their oldest kid, so they were probably like there the whole time he was there, which is not going to be great for them. Anyway, that's some cool family history. But uh, some people out there are not going to get reached. And sometimes it is probably the best idea to just give them potentially the ability to get help and also tell them that you care about them still, even if they don't seem like they necessarily want you to keep living because of your beliefs.
Yeah, I'm pretty lucky in that, well, like over the course of this trip, my uncle and I, on very opposite sides of the spectrum politically,
Mhm.
would like talk a lot, but it's never really, you know, like that. It's just kind of more discussing things. And as much as um I like vehemently disagree with a lot of the things that he says, it can still be nice
Yeah.
and not terrible, and there's still a functioning relationship. Like more than functioning, because I work for him, so that's really good that that works out. But not not everybody has that luxury when I mean that's kind of one pet peeve of mine, is that when people are like, "Oh, I don't want to get involved," or "I don't want to talk about politics," because for a lot of people, um, it's not politics. It's like their rights as a human person, and
Hmm.
they don't have the luxury of just being like, "Oh, you know, I don't really want to get involved, or I don't want to talk about it." So anyway, yeah, fun family stuff, fun family conversations.
Yeah, even with like um I don't know, even with my cousin being we had a discussion about it because they know that I'm not at all religious, and they were like gonna go back to church. Uh, um, they were gonna go back to church because I think that they saw it as a good opportunity to like, um, I don't know, like help with like family unity stuff and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
uh, I think that that is a I think that's a certain way to get people to like act together as a family and talk and stuff like that. But and I think I even said this to her, but maybe not in as direct a way. I think that the church is a great place to go if their ideals match with yours and you like that version of community.
Mhm.
I think that the more productive and more ultimately like healthy way to go about that is to build your own community or find your own community within the place that you are, because that's always going to be more appropriate to like what you actually believe at the time.
Yeah.
I'm not one of those people who says that churches are cults or anything like that, because I don't think they're exactly the same, even if their structure starts the same. But the whole thing that keeps a church from being a cult is that there is free flowing choice of if you do it or not.
Mhm.
And religion is something that you should be able to just sort of do on your own if you want. Like that's the idea, is it's a belief system as opposed to a solid structure of like having to do something. And the closer things get to fundamentalism in any religion, the more I think that they need to fucking cool it. I'm sending
Yep.
you a message. This is Super Bowl related. Uh,
Ooh, yay. Oh no. Oh yeah, okay, okay. I finally get it. Okay.
Did you
Oh man. Okay. I
do you think
haven't
that
seen
was
any
maybe a
of
bad
the
idea?
I'm annoyed that we have to talk about this. So yes. I'm
I
annoyed. I haven't seen any of the commercials that created this stupid peanut lore, but
I want you to know. I also I ended up having to watch the hashtag baby nut commercial, but um, first off, worst hashtag.
not good.
Like
Don't.
that's maybe the worst hashtag ever. Except for my favorite hashtag gashtag, but I started that one as far as I know. Um, the the conversation we had like a month and a half ago about, hey, is Baby Yoda good or bad? I think this is the
This is
conclusion of that conversation.
okay. I think we can unequivocally say this is bad. Stop
Yes.
making baby versions of things and killing peanut characters. What, like, I don't even
Oh,
what
don't
happened to
worry.
it?
Baby Nut is the resurrection of the planter's peanut,
I
not
just
the
I
child of.
don't. That's brain space I'll never get back. That's
Also,
like
weirdly, this can lead us. Did you watch that movie trailer I sent you?
yes.
This can actually lead into that movie trailer discussion, which is that's
I'm
a
curious to see how you do this, so proceed.
well, so Baby Nut is like a very, very slow release version of the Green Man in this weird fiction they built up, in which, in case you weren't aware, the Planters Peanut, as a shitty mascot, uh, went over a cliff in a car and died uh, a
That's
few weeks before the Super
wow.
Bowl. Uh, and then I know you're very sad, but it has a happy ending. They put him in a grave and had a funeral for him, like you would. And then they buried the peanut so it sprouted a new small peanut that had, I think, the same voice. Like, I think that it is,
That's terrible.
I think that that baby has a voice that is just Mr. Peanut still. Um, but now it's baby nut and everybody loves it, right? Hashtag baby nut. Um, so uh, the reason why that works in is that this Green Knight trailer, um, which is a what is it? A24, is that the company?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, uh, I always think of there's like a old video game company from like the early 90s that I think was A2M that I always thought was really funny. Uh, and I always think of that when I think of A24. Anyway, uh, the Green Knight is the story of Gawain in like Camelot lore, and I think Gawain existed in some stuff, but I think he's almost exclusively from poetry. I think this is a poem originally, uh,
Mhm.
and if I remember, it's one of the earlier poems that was really focused on like natural like uh, description. Like it was really at least in that area. Like clearly, there's been poems about nature forever, but like in the Camelot lore, it's sort of this like it's this look at uh, chivalry and stuff like that, but it's through uh, this like really basic but sort of classical hero's journey. Uh, and the reason why this has to do with Baby Nut is that this is essentially the translation of the beliefs in the Green Man that preceded all of the like more present day religions and stuff in like the British Isles and things like that. Uh, and the Green Man is sort of the basis, along with some Norse stuff and things like that, and various like Eastern religions of what the Jesus story is as well. So like the way that Jesus is written is actually emulating the Green Man, and a lot
Mhm.
of the things that a lot of the dates that Jesus has in like the religious time frame to like set up holidays and stuff are actually the Green Man holidays being covered by
Oh,
those holidays. So like
interesting.
Christianity in a lot of ways was designed uh, by people setting it up to replace a lot of the things in those old religions and stuff that were more like animistic and had like a lot of like the earth is the center of everything, but we're telling these like analogies through story to tell you, hey, everybody has a shared experience, which is religion I can get behind. Like that is something I like. But the Green Man was a figure who was uh, essentially uh, like a god, but like mortal, and they followed the year's trajectory. So uh, they died in the winter and they were resurrected in the spring. So like they're uh, what is it? Is it Passover? I
That
didn't I
sounds.
didn't work all of this stuff out, but the Easter rebirth being
Yeah.
different from the Jesus rebirth, the reason for that is the Easter rebirth is the Green Man's rebirth and uh, not actually a Jesus timeline.
Okay.
But the Green Man's super interesting. It is like a really old version of that stuff, so the story isn't super complicated, honestly. It's just a life and death and rebirth story, but it even works in sort of the same like tempos as like the later Christian stuff, and the Camelot stuff echoes that with Gawain is I think the youngest knight in the Round Table in those stories, and what I think he starts the story off just being in the like the knighthood, and then a knight like a big essentially the Green Man comes to their castle, but
Mm-hmm.
he's described as a Green Knight, and he comes and says that anybody is allowed to cut off his head. The only condition is that he gets to do it to them in a year. So the uh, the knights don't really have any interest in it. That's how I remember it, at least. Except Gawain says he'll do it because he's the youngest knight and he has something to prove. So he cuts off his head, and then the Green Knight picks up his head and puts it back on, and says, like, "I'll see you in a year," and leaves. Um, but the reason for that, and also this is a poem, so of course it's sort of flowery, and it's the storyline is weird, but poems are weird, so that's how
Yeah.
it works. Uh, the story is the youngest knight, so it's sort of the symbol for like childhood, uh, traveling sort of on the travel of life for a year, and then he goes to like meet his death at the end. So he is essentially he's taking the Green Knight's place in a way, but he is also showing uh, the Green Man's travel through the year the same way the seasons do.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then at the end, he is symbolically killed, but he's he goes back to the castle, and like his journey is complete for that. Um, and it's really interesting as like a way of a like old civilization kind of dealing with ideas that are even older that they didn't know exactly how to deal with, and then seeing them as a much later civilization thinking about like what does that mean to us now. So I
Mm-hmm.
really love that they're making this a movie because people don't talk about the Green Man that much, especially in our heavily Christian United States. uh,
Yeah.
and I
I've
think it'd be
never heard
great
of
if
it
they
before.
did. But that character it shows at the end is their take on the Green Man. It looks like, but as a knight, as opposed to just like normally he's just a an old man by the time winter comes, which is what it looks like they're showing.
Hmm.
Uh, but yeah, I'm super excited for it. It has a lot of weird imagery, and that studio is really good at cutting trailers, but typically their movies tend to pay off. So I'm excited for that. It's also
It
got
looked
some
really cool.
weird imagery, which I'm a big fan of.
Yeah, it looked very intense. Like
Hmm.
parts of it looked to be pretty graphic, which I was like, oh, that looks really interesting. I want to see it.
Yeah. So if anybody out there is interested in nerdy stuff that's not going to help you at all in life, uh, go look up the Green Man. And uh, some people write about its similarities to Christendom, but uh, I think a lot of people who are scholars of that particular era are kind of tired of making that point because nobody's going to listen to it. So
I've never even heard of that before,
yeah, I think
but
that's kind of
also
standard.
that makes sense for my background, I think.
Your Christian background,
My upbringing. Yep.
yeah, idolatry. You
Yep.
can't
That
do
is,
that.
you can't. No.
Well, and they can't either. That's the important thing.
Mm.
You like that Green Man? Fuck you, it's Jesus now.
You can't have him.
And
I
we
mean,
can't get rid of Christendom. Look at Pornhub. Everybody's going to be fucking aliens and their sister. You can't do that.
it's true. That's
God's the only thing keeping people from doing
it's
that.
the only thing stopping them from.
I wish that I could say that confidently. I honestly, the more people I talk to that are like even just extended family, the more it feels like, do you have to go to church to believe this? Like, couldn't you just make those assumptions on life and not do terrible things?
Uh-huh.
You would think, I made a room full of people watch that Goop episode about Jillin off. So, news update.
Yay! How did it go over? I want to know
Goopel
all the
strikes
details.
again. Uh, they sure do put. Well, we have a large TV here. My roommate bought a very large TV years ago, and
Fabulous.
those vaginas are big.
It's Yep, they're
Also,
real up close.
uh, one of the people watching, I'll note that they're a woman. They identify as female. Uh, they they called out how like kind of weirdly misandric some of that show is, which I mean I have no problem with that existing, but uh, I do think it's funny as a I don't know, like it sucks actually that Goopel's whole thing is one of the few things that is very easily accessible as a girls club, as like a place where it's like let's focus on women. That should not be the venue for it. uh and
Yeah.
the fact that there is like a lot of self-love in that episode seems great. uh but if they had the same show on Netflix, and instead of just showing a dick, it was a guy grabbing it and like splaying it open and like ruffling the balls around, I feel like people would be like, well, you didn't have to show that part. Like, we can look at it, but you don't have to like jostle the bits around. Like, it doesn't help to
I
do
don't
that.
like this.
Yeah. Uh, I got that feeling watching it of like, 100% down with positivity on the feminine form. Uh, and I totally get it. There's a lot of women that I know who are feminist who still have weird hangups about like uh, this this image doesn't show what women look like when in
Yeah.
fact it does in some cases, but it doesn't show what their femininity looks like. Like there should just be more of it. Like that's the
Yeah.
only way to cure that. But you don't have to jostle it around. You can just show it. It's fine.
Less Jocelyn.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was received pretty
I think
considering pretty okay, I guess.
I think it was received fine, but everybody rightfully hates Goopel. She
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
sucks. I didn't even show them the part where she has that like fake ass push up competition.
I God, that part like gives me war flashbacks to every time I've been uh coerced into working out with my mother.
Uh-huh.
Who was really, really strong and could actually do that. And I'm what's her face in that scenario. I'm the other one that's like, oh no, you're so strong. I can't compete.
Have you considered that she has the power of Jesus behind her?
She absolutely does.
I mean, that's gonna swing the meter pretty far in her direction.
The
Monster
resolve,
Energy drink tastes like it has Smarties mashed up in it in a really unpleasant way. Just so you know, I've had almost all of this already.
the way you're saying that is as if there would be a pleasant way to have Smarties mashed up in any drink that you could drink.
There's also 54 grams of sugar in this can.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. So, they don't have to give you a percentage of your daily value of sugar? That doesn't
It's
seem
like
good.
3,000%, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Monster. I'm just curious. I want to see what the Monster Energy drink website looks like.
I bet it's good.
Oh, yeah. Floating very slow. Whoa! They just, the way they load in all their images is like it's attacking your screen. And the biggest one is of Conan McGregor. And it's just like this.
Oh, the fighter guy?
Yeah, I assume.
Doesn't he
I
beat
don't know.
women? Wasn't that like a thing not that long ago?
I have no clue.
I
I
heard
don't
that
know.
when he started getting rich, he started getting really abusive, and he's got so much money behind him that people are like, "Oh, it's fine."
Oh, speaking of that, happy party time corner. I've been listening to Catch and Kill podcast, which
Yeah.
is not happy party time corner.
How's it going? I don't know that podcast.
So do you know like Crooked Media, John Lovett?
Yeah.
Um, or Ronan Farrow. I guess he's like in like a minor celebrity or something. I didn't really know who he was. I only
Ronan
know who he,
Farrow?
yeah.
Ronan
I only
Farrow's Mia Farrow's son, and he's also a reporter who has been going after a lot of like very shitty conservative people.
Right. Yeah. So it's his podcast, but it's like an offshoot of his book, Catch and Kill.
Oh, okay.
So
That's actually super interesting.
yeah, it's a very good podcast. It's really interesting, and there's a lot of like he talks to people. There were like private investigators hired to like follow him at one
Uh-huh.
point by like through a bunch of other people. Weinstein had hired people to follow
Yeah.
him, and then the guy, his name is Igor, like kind of like put two and two together and was like, oh, Weinstein is hiring us to find out stuff about him and is probably going to try and hurt him, and I don't want to be a part of that. So he actually like reached out to Ronan and was like, hey, this is happening. And so it's about like he is a guest on it, and then like a bunch of the women are the like survivors are on it, and it's just super interesting. They have recordings of
Hmm.
the one, I think her name is Ambra, that she was a model and she like did a like a sting operation with the police, and they mic'd her to try and get a confession out of him.
Okay.
um it's really it's really interesting, but it's really disheartening because it's like so. I mean, the whole thing is just a pile of turds
It's
to
not
know
a
about.
feel-good story, but
No,
it is
it's
good that
so
they managed to
infuriating.
do something about Weinstein.
Yeah, it's a while ago. I think I saw there was an article and like a photo of him showing up to the first day of his
Oh,
trial.
is that the one where he had like a walker?
Yeah, he's like walking with a walker and looks
He's
like shit.
he looks like he's trying to pretend like he's in
Yeah,
serious trauma so that people will fucking cut him some slack, which they should 100% not do.
yeah. He looks like he's putting on a show, and even if he's not, I who gives any cares
Yeah,
about the
no,
health of that
he can eat
turd?
a dick. They should put him in a room with um what's his name? The pudding guy who touched all those women.
The pudding guy?
Cosby. There we go. Uh,
Oh,
they should put him and
oh my
Cosby
god! There's
in
one.
a cell together.
There's one episode where I think it's actually in one of the recordings that they play in the podcast where oh no, it's one of the survivors is like recounting an interaction she had with him, and she's like he ended their interaction, their conversation in which he like overtly harassed her multiple times, but he ended it by being like, well, I guess I'll just shake your hand. I don't want to get sued for sexual harassment like what's happening at Cosby. And he also says to another girl at one point, he's like bragging. He so gross. One of the things that he does is he like brings up the fact that he's had sex with like actresses that are hot, and he
Uh-huh.
uses that as like, I've had sex with them, why can I not with you? Like that just follows, I guess.
Hey,
And
corporatism is evil.
It's real bad. And he says, like, oh, and I don't even have to do what Cosby does. Like, he directly compares himself to Cosby. He's like, I don't even have to, like, drug them. And actually, in that conversation, the girl he was talking to was, like, a lawyer. And
Good. Great.
she was one of the people who got harassed that worked for him, and she was a lawyer, and she was like, how stupid are you to say something so, like, horribly incriminating? But it's really awful to listen to, but also it's really interesting. So
it also seems somewhat important. Like, I think these people need to be, I don't know, they need to be pointed out without quite so much like social scrutiny. Like, the fact that one person says something shitty about you can just be a dispute and a way to get back at somebody. But if you have a whole bunch of people saying it, maybe you should actually put it in a trial situation and, like, make sure that law is headed in the right direction. Because I don't know, if we're gonna have, like, lawsuits and stuff for this, like, at least do the work. Like, there's plenty of people out there who don't have enough work. They could be trying these cases and stuff.
Yeah, and that's why I really like Ronan Farrow. Listening to him, he like hosts the podcast because it's his, but it's really amazing to listen to him talk through all this stuff that he went through to get this information. And you wouldn't even think, I mean, like, it makes sense. I guess this is just me being naive, but he was talking about how he had people, like, threatening him and, like, sending him death threats, and like, Weinstein obviously hired people to tail him and, like, figure out what he was doing. And it's just like, you don't think it's that seems like far-fetched. That seems like something that happens in movies, but it's just something that happens when, I guess, these people who are so blatantly and openly horrendous just have so much money to totally, like, completely erase any sort of consequences for themselves. And it's just it's so infuriating listening to all the different interviews of all the people being like, oh yeah, this is just, everybody knows this, everybody knew this. Like, everybody would be, don't drink around Harvey, like, things will happen. And it's like, how can that be such an openly known thing and nothing happens? No
Well, it's
consequence.
like,
So mad.
There was all that speculation about, like, stuff that I think it was like Ben Affleck and some of those people had, like, somehow been involved in some of that, and, like, knowingly putting people in a position where they would be with Harvey Weinstein one-on-one, but, like, they had enough deniability to where that's not really going to affect you, but maybe it should. Like, I don't know any of the details on that, so don't hold me to it, but it is that, like, a lot of these people should maybe just be in a public setting where a judge can ask them, hey, what'd you do? Like, did you know what you were doing or not?
Yeah. And I'm glad that people are, like, Ronan, are doing, like, podcasts and writing articles and really detailing, like, the actual facts of what happened, as opposed to it being, like, some vague notion that, like, oh yeah, he's a bad dude, but, like, no, it's so like, deeper and more ominous than that, because it's just been over so many years. And oh my gosh, just listening to some of the things that, like, there's no way to calculate. I mean, not even talking about the mental and physical well-being of the women that he attacked. There's no way to calculate, like, the career opportunities that they all missed out on.
Yeah.
Because of the shitty thing that he did to him, because like not only would he harass them and whatever, he if they like denied him, he would like make sure their career just went straight into the ground after that.
Yeah.
Like there was a couple of people they were talking about that were supposed to be in the Lord of the Rings, but whoever the director was for that was asking Miramax, Weinstein's company, about a few different actresses, and they were like, no, they're hard to work with, don't work with them. So they didn't get Lord of the Rings. Like that has to be so much money.
Yeah. Well, and just like if you're in Lord of the Rings, your career is made. Like you're good.
Right.
And if you're
exactly.
not, then you might not even be able to make it in that career period. Like it's such a huge, like, I don't know. I'm sure that exists in all forms of art too, which is the shittiest.
Mm-hmm.
That guy in Seattle who was like molesting women for years, I guess, and then he finally so I remember it being like he got called out by somebody and then one or two other people called him out and then he was just like, yeah, I did it, and he like got excised from his company and lost, I think, some of his money, but probably not all of it. And like that stuff is really hard to ferret out too, because a lot of the people who do that stuff aren't necessarily doing anything else that's that bad.
Yeah.
So there's such a huge like group of people, if they're like wealthy and doing stuff for the community. I mean, it's like Cosby, like he did a ton of really good stuff for the black community, and he like pushed a lot of people in a way that got like black television and stuff rolling.
Mm-hmm.
He was just a terrible person in other places. Like,
Yeah.
it's fucked up.
Yeah, I mean, Weinstein these are bad examples, but he was a huge political contributor to like Hillary and Bloomberg. Right. Like terrible examples, but he was politically, involved, I guess.
I mean, there's like a 50% chance that anybody listening to this thinks that that's great. So, at least for the Hillary shit.
Yeah, I guess.
If you like Bloomberg, you're a fucking rube. I mean, if you like Hillary, you are too. But at least there was history with the Hillary stuff. You can ignore the black super predators. Happy Black History Month. If you weren't willing to hear about it, but that was a big part of her working as the first lady. So, maybe consider that. And the fact that she's one in a long string of people who tried to blame all of violence in youth on video games, which is always fun.
Fucking stupid.
They really supported that whole idea of violence is always getting worse, so we're going to try to make it better, when all the statistics are violence is constantly getting less.
Yeah.
And you just notice it more because we have real reporting.
Yeah.
Well, that's maybe a bad statement. We have lots of reporting now.
Widespread report. Everybody's reporting.
We have information. Yeah.
Yeah. I saw it. Oh my god. So I don't know if you saw or heard anything about this, but like in South Carolina, there was a 6-year-old that was murdered this last week. I think abducted and murdered. It was like the neighbor who did it anyway. But I was like going through Reddit, just kind of following what happened, and one of the comments on one of the articles was like, well, first thing they were like blaming the mom, and they were like, where are the parents? And the parents are at fault for this kid getting taken. And then they followed that up by saying, this isn't the 1970s. Your kids aren't safe.
What?
I just had to laugh. I was like, okay. All right.
Oh, yeah. It's not safe like the 1970s. Fuck.
The prime example of a safe decade. There you go. Anyway.
Well, that's our episode title.
The 1970s, the safest decade of all. Well, I don't know. I don't want to end the episode on murdered 6-year-old. That seems like a bad place.
Why was she murdered? Do you know?
I don't like. It's kind of they're not releasing a lot of information about it because it is a 6-year-old.
Yeah, that's probably good. I'm surprised, but that's probably for the best.
Yeah. All they've said is that it was like they found her and then they found the neighbor within proximity to each other, and there was some sort of piece of evidence that tied them together, like they had been together. Yikes. So yeah,
that's
not great.
I want to say it was like a brother or a stepdad or something. I forget. A few weeks ago, somebody dressed up as Santa Claus and just emptied a gun into somebody's Christmas party. It was somebody that they knew, I think. Wow. And I think one of the people who died in that was also a young kid. So that's fun. People are cool around the holidays. Fuck. Well, yeah, we're not going to end it there, but I think it is worth resurrecting the Sanders talk for a second, because so did you keep an eye on any of the Iowa stuff, or what was it, New Hampshire after that?
I know the results. That's basically it. All I know about the Iowa stuff is that Pete's a sneaky little bitch. That's what I know about Iowa. I knew that before though. And then what else? And the results, I guess, but that's it. It was just a clusterfuck.
Yeah, all the results show Pete with a 0.1 lead. That was, I think, the final. But the popular vote was 6,000 more for Bernie. Yeah. Which is real fun as somebody who the only choice to vote for in this country for us is Democrat. And the last time this shit happened, it was the exact same thing where a shitty candidate got just weird representative wins, even though they didn't win. Mm-hmm. Also worth noting, Buttigieg was, I think, a year ago talking about how whoever gets the popular vote win should be the winner in elections.
Yeah, I feel like we might be changing our tune on that one.
Yeah, even though Bernie had the popular win well ahead of when the final numbers were completely shored up, Buttigieg was fine with declaring himself the winner way before that, which cool.
Did you hear about the app thing too in his
Shadow?
campaign?
Did I hear about Shadow? Yeah, I did. Did you know the guy? It's the guy who owns Shadow, or the guy who has the company that is the company that also owns Shadow, is the guy who started Dollar Shave Club. Really gives you a lot of confidence.
It goes all the way to the top.
Anyway, I think that guy's wife is friends with Buttigieg. So any idea of it being completely separate from the people in the running, I don't think there's any conspiracy there, honestly. I think that, I can't say for sure, but I don't think there is. Mm. But the fact that there is a person who runs the parent company of the little sub project that's tallying votes for whether or not we should look at this person as a presidential candidate is married to a close friend of the presidential candidate. Doesn't seem like it fits in the don't mix your interests kind of political thing that you're supposed to have.
Yeah. And Pete's campaign donated a ton of money specifically for that app to be made.
Yep.
That's where I get a little conspiracy theorist.
Look, it's just that I'm friends with them. We go way back. I gave them a ton of money, and also like, there's no influence here.
I don't get your point.
Look, all I did was give them a spot on the Lord of the Rings. It has nothing to do with my actual presidential run. It just happens to kind of pass by each other, you know? It's no big deal.
I just know everybody. I'm friends with everybody.
I'm
Pete.
My biggest anger with that, I don't think that picture's on my phone. I took all the pictures off my phone and put them on my computer because I run out of space because I'm an art dork, so I take reference photos of everything. Anyway, I took pictures of it at the time because I was really pissed off. Everybody talks about Apple being like sort of non politically centered when they do stuff as like a positive. The Apple News blurb that popped up for the Iowa caucuses specifically just stated that Buttigieg had won. It didn't state anything else. The Apple News blurb that popped up for the New Hampshire stuff said Klobuchar picks up speed, Yang drops out, and there is finally a decisive winner for New Hampshire. It did not mention Sanders in its blurb at all. It said Klobuchar picks up speed and Yang drops out. Like, what the fuck? If anybody else had gotten the first place in that set,
their name would be in the headline. Yeah.
God. But sorry, we're not allowed to say that because it's toxic if Bernie supporters mention that he's doing well because we're trying to destroy the country. So keep that under your hat. But also, what the fuck is that about?
Freaking yeah. I feel like even people before who were like, no, Bernie's treated fairly by the media, like it's fine. I feel like those people are starting to come around and see it because it's so blatant. It's so painfully like.
Did you see that fucking Chris Matthews shit?
No.
He already in the debates had that thing where he was interviewing people after the debates. I think he was interviewing Warren or something, and he was talking about like how she was trying to destroy his way of life in like not those exact words, but it was that kind of shit.
Yeah.
The representative of know nothing old white man with power. He had a thing like a week and a half ago, I think, that was I forget what show he was on, but it was on like MSNBC or something that's like liberal, whatever.
Okay.
And he was talking about how he just remembers how people were rounded up on the streets in socialism and shot in the head and silenced because of all the evils of socialism and communism and how they want to destroy free-thinking people, and he could be the next person on the street getting shot in the head. And then he immediately, from there is no pause in this, he says, now I don't know if Bernie wants that, but he hasn't given any indication that he doesn't.
Oh,
and it's just like, what the hell? Like, first off, socialist politics are not a communist like dictatorship. That's a completely different thing. It's having a communist dictatorship is further away from having a socialist leaning democracy than what we have right now. Like right now we have this weird like let's have just power for this like weird like couple of percent in our country, and the rest of us will just be like, I mean, they're slaves, but they're not real slaves, so who cares?
Yeah, that's not great. That's pretty blatantly stupid.
At least I have seen a couple people talk about that, because nobody fucking talked about him being weird as hell after the debates that he helped. Oh, what is it when you're leading the debates?
Like
I think
moderating.
he was one of the moderators for that, which is already a bad choice. But the the fact that he was like extremely like obviously opinionated and not reporting anything was already not talked about that much. This one I've seen lightly talked about, if not that many places. So I guess that's better. Just as a plug, if people haven't seen any of it, they should check out, I think it's Some News is the site on YouTube. Some News or Some More News. One of those is the podcast. One of those is the show. They did a really good, just like current breakdown of reporting in regards to a lot of the debates and stuff like that. And it's pretty up to date. I want to say it's pre-Iowa maybe, or maybe it's just after Iowa. But it goes over a lot of the like ways that messaging is being extremely distorted around like how are we going to tell people who don't want to take the time to think about this what's happening.
Yeah.
If you have any interest in politics whatsoever, that's worth watching. It's like their most recent episode. It's dumb. Also, if you have ever watched a Mr. Reagan video, I think that guy's name is like Chris Cole or something like that. That guy is a piece of shit. And about 1% of any of the words that come out of his mouth are real or sourced. And that's
I don't know
probably
who that is.
He's a piece of shit who happens to look, I guess, just attractive enough to convince people to watch him, because I was looking at like some of the groups that like him on the internet, and a lot of them are just talking about how fuckable he is, even if he seems kind of crazy. But I got sent one of his videos from relatives that was talking about AOC being an actor, which is one of the dumber conspiracy theories. But also when you know that that guy is a like LA actor who didn't find a good spot for himself and then became a YouTube right-wing like fake reporter, it makes a lot more sense. Anyway, that guy's a piece of shit. So this is an anti-plug. If you haven't looked at his videos, don't even type his name in. And if you have seen his videos, he's wrong. So know that going into it.
I would like this to be a recurring segment, the anti-plug segment.
Yeah.
Where we say, don't check this out. It's bad.
I got anti-plugs for days. We can put those in. I think Love It or Leave It is a fine podcast, but I would stay away from any of their more politically minded podcasts. At what's that called again? Cracked Media?
Crooked Media.
Crooked Media. I think John Lovett, not John Lovitz, the comedian, but John Lovett, the writer. Yeah. I think he is funny and personable, and I like his rants about stuff. But the other guys, especially the other John and whoever else is in there, who started Crooked Media, who worked for Obama, are some of the most centrist, popular people out there. So it's worth, if you do listen to their stuff, taking it with a grain of salt.
They're very like earlier in the pod when you said liberal, whatever that means now. They're
Yeah,
very liberal, whatever that means now.
yeah. Uh,
Um, yeah,
Liberal as a way of saying centrist without saying centrist. That's sort of where they're at.
yeah.
Um,
I listened to their main one, Pod Save America, for a while, and I
yeah.
kind of have fallen out of it. I don't like it as much anymore. They have
When it
some that are good though, like
Yeah, when it was further away from the election, it wasn't too bad because they were mostly talking about what's happening right
current
now.
events. Yeah,
And they are informed on what's happening. Their opinions on like what a president should do, those opinions are bad. But they also they're sort of in that big well of people who were uh, I don't know, mind wormed by uh, the West Wing growing up. They've all said
yeah,
that specifically, and
yeah,
the West Wing is like Aaron Sorkin, very famous horrible sexists like project of how can I make something that the government loves watching about themselves. So
yeah,
that's the basis of what they're working from, and it's not good, and it's very discrediting to things like how gay rights were not a democratic thing and stuff like that. Like that's stuff that you need to actually look into if you want information and not just listen to people because they say they're progressive.
yeah.
But John Lovett is funny, and I like his political rants. I like his
Mm-hmm.
rants about Starbucks more. Uh, and they have a lot of good guests that I think it's worth listening to. Love it or leave it for their dumb uh, what it's like political trivia shows and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
actually, he's got a show in Spokane that I might go to soon.
yeah, that
It'll be
stuff I
fun.
think is pretty fun. The what's the other one called again? The main one?
Pod Save America.
Pod Save America, when they were doing pre working to the presidential race stuff, was pretty interesting. But they uh, they go on this weird, like they try to support the Democratic Party uh, on a lot of stuff, and a lot of that includes trying to like deeply humanize like Joe Biden and pushing a lot of like Pete Buttigieg's ideas as totally reasonable. And
Mm.
uh, like for the good things they do, like they did support Abrams in her
Yeah,
technical victory that she lost because she's in what, Georgia or Alabama, I forget. Uh,
Georgia, I think.
Georgia, you're probably right. Like they did a lot of stuff that should happen, and they pushed a lot of ideas that people who are sort of afraid of the like further left, like actual like progressive stuff
Hmm.
should hear. But it's a bit of a bummer that they then go out there and talk about like Joe Biden's not weird, he's looking out for us. It's like ugh. Oh, good. Yeah. uh
Yeah, I'd be interested to hear what they're saying about Biden, about now after, what was it? Horse face pony soldier gate happened.
yeah.
Um, which
uh
is awesome, actually. I'm gonna call everybody that from here on out. But
Yeah, Horseface Pony Soldier and
what does that even mean?
apparently Horseface Soldier, maybe. It was in a one of the many movies that what's his name? Cowboy dude was in when he was alive. John Wayne.
Okay.
and he added the pony part, or maybe the pony soldier part, to be funnier. I guess that if that's his version of thinking on his feet, taking something that existed 60 years ago and turning it into a slightly different relatable joke.
An unknowable string of gibberish words.
Yeah, I mean, I think as our most eldritch candidate, he can represent that, but he shouldn't be elected, that's for sure.
Oh, I think he's gonna be out pretty soon. At least my dad was saying that depending on how well he does in South Carolina, he's calling it. So
that's good.
Sooner rather than later.
I would love it if Buttigieg called it, because he wants it.
He wants it.
Yeah. As a person who wrote reports about how much he idolized Bernie Sanders in his childhood, I feel like what he's doing right now is, I don't know, very appropriate to his character.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's easy to write things when you're not established and rich yet, that support poor ideals. If either of us get rich and start turning into religious Republicans, I think the other one of us needs to, I don't know, put them in a re-education camp. Though to be fair,
yeah,
re-education camp for either of us would probably just be the other of us yelling at them for hours on a video call. So we're not that far off.
No, we're pretty much there. Yeah. Oh, I forgot. I was going to say, the only other Crooked Media podcast that I would plug is Hysteria, which is their all-women podcast. That's pretty funny and pretty good.
Oh, what's it? Does it have a theme other than all women?
That's pretty much the theme.
Okay.
It's like, yeah, it's kind of what Pod Save America initially was, kind of just a round table of current events, but it's just like women talking about it. Yeah, and yeah, that's basically it. They have what do they call it? They have kind of a rant corner, but it has a special name. Oh, the hill you will die on is what they call it.
Okay.
So every week, everyone gets to pick a hill, and there's also toasts and roasts, which are good. I almost exclusively listen to podcasts just to hear people yell about things. So.
Honestly, it is very appealing. I like podcasts with people being upset about stuff. It gives me more faith in humanity in a weird way.
Yeah, John Lovett screaming about, like, oh God, what was even one of the last things I listened to? I don't know, like the end of BoJack Horseman. That is that's what I want.
I think one of the last episodes I listened to, he was yelling about all of San Francisco's scooter companies. And I actually, as an example of when I do like their stuff, he goes on a big rant about how these scooters are everywhere and it's such a pain in the ass, and like this isn't helping anybody, and it's just like a huge problem. And then he ends the story by talking about, like, but I got on one of those scooters because I was like tight on time and having to get to work, and they're really fun. And actually, it's probably great that they're here, and now I'm not sure what I think anymore. Which I think that's a good way to present it, because, like, not to have a small rant of my own, but I'm going on a trip at the end of next month for like a week, and it has been another instance of people not understanding when I tell them that I don't drive. Like, I use transit options and I use other forms of travel, but I walk most places I go to, and I take the bus to get to work. And I'm very happy not interacting with cars because one, it's expensive, and two, like the fewer cars, the better.
Yeah.
Cars are supposed to be something that ideally, I think, would actually be more of a rental than a purchase, where you're trained to drive, you go somewhere when you need to go somewhere, and that is exercising a certain freedom, but owning a car seems entirely superfluous in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I know that that is a huge benefit of living in a center of like people. Like I'm only a half hour away from a city, so like I can have the luxury of not having a car. And for people who don't live in a city where cars are a little cheaper to come across, you don't have to worry so much about like huge wear and tear most of the time. You are worrying about getting where you're going. I
Mm-hmm.
think cars should be cheaper. Like I think this car industry thing is pretty shitty the way it's set up.
Yeah.
Uh, and I had to have a conversation yesterday about like when I said that I don't drive, it's not because I just don't have the money and I'm not wanting to drive. It's because I literally don't drive. Like I don't have a current license. I could not legally drive right now, which I personally think having a license is a good idea, but I just haven't had time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things of like, if I knew leading in and I were practiced and I were like ready to go, we could take turns. I think that's a good idea, but that probably should have been set up earlier. And now it's like all the expectations in this trip were like totally off. And of course,
Oh.
this was a conversation that we had after the last plane ticket was bought for everything, which is
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, well, there's no going back now. I don't want to kill us, so that's probably not going to work. But now we have to figure out how we're going to make it work. Anyway, for people out there who don't drive, if we get a position uh, in the future where driving isn't a way that you have to like live your life in order to be able to make even close to enough money to support your family, if we can get some kind of like welfare within the community of some kind,
Mm-hmm.
uh, that seems like a good place to start talking about like maybe shooting tons and tons of shit into the air with millions of cars can be toned down a little.
Yeah, that would
You
be
know,
nice.
what would be cool is if say I wanted to go to Idaho, if we wanted to do like a live show with something or
Mm-hmm.
like travel to something, if I could just take a bus for like $100 and like go do stuff in Idaho, uh, I used to be able to go to Portland from here by bus for $60 round trip not very long ago, and
Oh, really?
that bus station doesn't even exist in Seattle anymore.
Oh.
Uh, and like those kinds of transit options, it those need to be way more prevalent. Uh,
Yeah. Even like a Greyhound from Spokane to Seattle is pretty expensive now. I think it's like at least 100 round trip. So,
yeah. Well, and there aren't that many. Like
yeah.
it's expensive for a round trip on a bus, and it's also not a great like way to do it where
Hmm.
it wouldn't take that, like we have streets, we don't need a lot of infrastructure, we just need people to stop thinking that cars equal freedom and start thinking that cars equal like utility again. But
Yeah.
I don't think that's ever going to happen, but that's why it's a rant, I guess.
I think we've captured a lot of big ideas in this podcast.
Yeah,
More so than usual. But I like it. It's good.
to be fair, maybe having this rant of things that will never happen at the end will up the chances of the other things happening. We can
Yeah.
hope.
Yeah. That's I hope so.
What are you squishing?
My therapy Play-Doh. I got it. It's I guess it is called therapy dough, but I just got it at a little like gift shop down here, but it just like smells nice.
I forgot that that was something that you had. I think you were squishing that last time.
Yeah, I probably was. I use it like all the time now for phone calls and stuff because I'm always like just idly picking shit up and putting it down and like making noise because I'm anxious. But like this helps me to at least stay quiet.
Yeah, I fuck with this mic cord. Eventually that'll come back on me, but for now it's okay.
It's I can't hear it, so it's good.
Well, I also chewed on Pocky. I'm sure that was into the mic, so you know.
Oh yeah, we haven't had much ASMR this episode. Can't wait. Can you hear this?
Ugh.
I'm gonna take that as a
Yeah.
yes.
Do a little more.
Wait, I want to try and make a bubble. This is excellent podcasting material. Oh, I didn't do it. Oh well. There we go. I'm probably just hitting the microphone on it. It usually makes more bubble sounds when you put it back in the jar.
Uh, well,
Anyway.
someday we'll get good at podcasting. Not today,
Someday.
though.
Not today. Well, oh, I was gonna say we should also do a nail corner because I noticed you have some
Oh,
nail art happening, and I just did these last night, and I like the color a lot.
yeah. We
It's
can.
like a pastel lavender purple. I like.
You should update. Oh, well, there's the thumb.
Ooh, I like that. That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, that was my weird art show nail set.
I like them.
We can do a nail update on the at Vegeta for 2069.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah. We'll do that.
I'll send you a photo of mine. You can put them on there.
Okay, good. Everyone dying to know what our hands look like. You're about to find out.
And good news for anybody who wants to watch this or starts watching this. Well, there will probably be more people once we're actually like pushing it a little more, but the videos should be going up the night after we record them starting next week. So next week we're going to be actually like pretty current. So if you start watching these and this one will probably be up like next like Friday or something. So yesterday, keep in mind starting like in the next couple days you'll be able to hear about events that weren't a month ago.
Yay!
So that'll be exciting.
We'll be topical.
And Madison will decide if we can put these videos linked to Facebook or not.
Yeah, I will decide. I have to do some Facebook permissionsing.
Yeah. So
yeah.
once we have some of those lists worked out, you'll see these in more places. I wanna try and do a live show on YouTube Live in the near future.
Yeah.
And we have somebody lined up to start reading some scandalous and terrible fan fictions. And depending on they're a very good reader. They don't sound like me. Depending on how we end up setting that up, they may be their own little episodes, and we can upload those like midweek, perhaps. So
Ooh,
we'll see how
I
that
love it.
works.
Yeah.
Thinking of having them in every like couple of weeks, and we could do a 3-person thing on like a weekend, maybe. Uh,
Yeah.
have them read the story just on my computer, and then I'll be sitting maybe behind them. There is a chair here, technically, uh, because I'm helping with some of the story procurement, and they're stupid. So
Good.
expect that in the near future. I'm pretty excited for it.
We've always needed a fanfic corner.
Yeah.
That's going to be amazing.
And those episodes will probably be like a good half hour. A lot of the stories aren't super short. Um,
Oh, yeah.
uh, but yeah, so looking forward to big moves. Glad that we are back podcasting. That week of no podcasting felt weird. Uh, also,
Yeah,
you were in Dallas, so I'm sure that felt weird.
it felt real weird.
But you got to spend a night with the stick, so that's good.
I did. I did spend a night in the branch room. That was good. Yep.
Well, that was good podcast. Great
We
job.
did it. Good job.
McClunkey.